If we decide to do this thing, we can do it successfully. And there's also no doubt in my mind that the whole world hangs in the balance.
Well, hello. My name is Elizabeth Anne Helm-Frazier, and I am a Master Sergeant, U.S. Army retired. I want to thank George Marshall for this invitation to come to you and talk to you this month in celebration of Women's History Month. You know, women have been a part of our history for as long as time has. And they have done extraordinary things. But many of those times, women was not given the same amount of celebration, gratitude, even awards as men. Women served in this country, did the things that men do, and when the wars were over or the conflicts were over, a lot of them, or most of them, was asked to just go back home and go back to doing your womanly duties. The picture that you see here, I don't know if you can see it very well, is a picture of Black women, and they are in uniform. When I was in the Army, I saw this picture, would always see this picture, and I wondered, well, who are those women? Because that's the unit that I want to be in. They were women that looked just like me. And it wasn't until I learned the death of the commander of this particular unit, which is this lady here, where I'm pointing to. I learned about her death in 2002. Her name was Charity Adams Early. In this picture, it is Captain Charity Adams Early. Later, she got promoted to Major Charity Adams, and she is inspecting the 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion. The 6888 Directory the 6888 Central Directory Postal Battalion was an all-Black female unit made up of 855 African-American women. These women came from different parts of our country. Some of them already had careers, some of them came into the military for a career. Now, I want you to imagine World War II, and of course, we were not born back then, World War II, and the state of this country, the United States of America. It was not a very good place for African Americans. African Americans were deemed that they could not do certain things. Now add in the fact that you are an African American woman. So you were even lower on the totem pole than the African American men. These women in this unit, the 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion, came from different parts of the life in different parts of the country. They enlisted voluntarily to come into the service and do the same thing as their male counterparts. They wanted to serve their country. World War II, the Women's Army Corps was created in March of 1941 by then U.S. Representative Edith Noor Rogers of Massachusetts. She introduced a bill to Congress to create the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, the WAAC. Okay. May of 1942, President Franklin D. Roosevelt then said, okay, we've created this WAAC, but it's not an official status yet. And what happened? The First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, and Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, a civil rights leader, advocated for women, for Black women, to join the WAAC as enlisted and officers. In July of 1942, the new WAAC went and recruited women, Black women, to come to basic training at Fort Des Moines, Iowa. And it was a very physical program. And then it was followed by another 4 to 12 weeks of specialty training. So you had basic training, and then you had to go these additional weeks for your specialty training. And in that group was 444 officers and 125 enlisted. Of that, 40 of those women were Black women who went through the officer training course there at Fort Des Moines. And that was Captain Charity Adams. She was the first Black woman to graduate as a WAAC Corps officer. And remember, WAAC was the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, okay? So let's talk about the 6888. I am a supporter of the 6888. There are right now 7 living known members. One of those members lives here in my area. I live in Laurel, Maryland, which is right between Baltimore and Washington, D.C. There is a member that lives in this same area as I do. Her name is Dolores L. Rudock, and she was in the 6888. There's a member that lives out in Las Vegas. Her name is Mrs. King. There's a member that lives in Arizona. Her name is Mrs. McClendon. Now, Mrs. McClendon has a very unique story. She was in the 6888, and when the 6888 disbanded, Mrs. McClendon decided to stay on active duty and went into the Air Force. So she did kind of like an in-service transfer. She went into the service, she went into the Air Force, and she retired as an Air Force major. So Mrs. McClendon actually is Major Fanny Griffin McClendon, retired U.S. Air Force. She lives out, like I said, in Arizona. She still drives, still lives by herself, and she has a great memory of the 6888. You have Mrs. Robertson that lives up in Wisconsin. Now, Mrs. Robinson is unique too because of the group, she is the youngest. She just turned 97 years old. We have Mrs. Griggs that lives down in Florida. We have Mrs. Heaton that lives in North Carolina. And we have Mrs. Riggs who lives in Alabama. And she is the oldest of the living 7 that we know of. She is 101. So the youngest of these living legends, as we call them, is 97, and the oldest is 101 years old. What's amazing about all of these women is they served their country, did what they're supposed to do, and then a lot of them got out, came back to the civilian sector. A lot of them used their GI Bill to go back to school, got trainings in areas of nursing, medicine, education. They got married, they raised kids, but they never talked about their service. They never talked about their service. It wasn't until in 2018, I got a poster that looked like this poster, and it said, "Help build a monument for the 6th AAA." Well, first of all, I thought 6th AAA already had a monument, okay? And then I said, wow, a monument for the 6th AAA? Man, that's pretty cool. And so I sent my donation check in, and I often tell people, and I'm going to tell you, don't write a letter asking, how can I help? Okay, because you might get an answer back. Okay, and I got an answer back. And the person that was doing this project was a man by the name of Mr. Carlton Philpott. He is a commander, US Navy retired, and he was starting a project to get a monument for the 6th AAA. And so that is how my connection to the 6th AAA started, was with a donation and asking the question, how can I help? So along with another teammate of mine, her name is Edna Cummings. Edna is a retired colonel, US Army. We teamed up and started to raise money for this monument, and we wanted to get the word out about the 6th AAA. Now you might be saying, well, I don't know who they are. Well, don't feel bad, because a lot of people did not know who the 6th AAA was. They knew this picture, but they did not know the story behind the picture. They did not know the unit. They didn't know. They just thought it was a bunch of Black women standing up, okay? So that was our mission, to go out and get people to not only donate, but make them aware of the 6th AAA, who they were. Now, you're gonna ask me, well, what did the 6th AAA do in World War II? Well, many of you will probably go into the service, okay? Now, I want you, if you can, to imagine not having Facebook, not having YouTube, not having Twitter, not having Instagram, not having a cell phone. Can you imagine that? Okay, well, I can imagine that because I grew up without those social media things. I didn't have all of that, okay? I didn't even have a cell phone, okay? You had pay phones, okay? Now, I know some of y'all don't, well, what is a pay phone? Yeah, you used to have those phone booths. You see some of these phone booths somewhere. Yeah, you would have to go in that phone booth and put some money in the coin collector and then dial a number. That was a pay phone, okay? Or you just had your regular push button phone or even dial phone, okay? People in the military, there are a lot of important things, but at that time, especially in World War II, one of the most important things was mail. Yeah, I'm talking about letters, cards. I think you all call it snail mail. Okay, well, before all of this social media stuff, people actually used to write letters and send cards. How about that? You got to try that sometimes, okay? But in the military, when I was in the military, the three most important things to a service member at that time was getting paid, because you got to have a paycheck, okay? Food and shelter, because you got to eat and you got to have some place to sleep, okay? But the third most important thing was mail. You could have a bad day, okay? And mail call would happen, and you get mail, you forget about that bad day, because mail kept you connected. Mail brightened your day. Mail let you know what was going on back home. And don't let it be your birthday, okay? Don't let it be your birthday, because you got cards. That's when people used to send physical cards, hard copy cards. You just got an influence. And then like with me, my mother, Dolores, was a great cook. And so for my birthday, she would make a cake and pack it up and get it sent to me. And yeah, sometimes it would be crumbled. But I tell you, that was the best cake ever, okay? And if you were overseas, getting mail was even more important, because not only were you not in the States, but you were in another country, okay? And sometimes you didn't really understand the language. So to get mail from home kind of kept it all together. It turned a really bad day into a good day, and a really good day into a great day, okay? So let's go back to World War II. There was a problem. The Army, the military recognized that esprit de corps, morale was really bad amongst the service members, not just the Army, the service members, period. And why was that? One of the reasons was because people was not getting mail. They were not able to hear from their families, okay? And now keep in mind, there was a war going on, okay? There was a war going on. And people were moving around, stuff was happening, and people did not know if their loved ones were safe or had been killed or not. Okay, so they were writing letters, sending packages, service members were not getting them. And that is a real morale downer, okay? So I want you to imagine or try to do, I don't know if you can do it, but I want you to turn off your phones and put them out of your sight, let's just say for 4 hours. Can you do that? Probably not, okay? But imagine not being able to have your phone, not only for 4 hours, but for months at a time. So for months at a time, you couldn't use your phone. How would you feel about that? Okay, imagine World War II, months at a time, you did not get any mail. So you don't know how your mother's doing, how your father's doing. Many of the service members were married. They didn't know how their wives were doing. And I say wives because it was World War II at the time. Some of them had kids that they had never seen because they had shipped out. So they wasn't getting any news from home. And that is a real morale booster. The Army recognized that. And leadership in the Army said, wow, we have to do something about this. And so they had to come up with a plan. And there, the 6th AAA Central Postal Directory Battalion was formed. What they did was, the Army says, okay, we need a postal battalion. Now, there were other postal battalions, there were other postal units throughout Europe and over in other theaters, such as the Pacific. But this was a battalion. This was going to be a postal battalion. Postal mail is all that their mission was. And so Army recruiters, Army leadership started asking for volunteers. And these women started stepping up. Most of the women were already at other duty stations, such as Miss Rudock. She was already at a duty station in Oklahoma. And she volunteered. She says, I'm gonna go. Now she had no idea what this unit was gonna be. Okay. She just volunteered, as did all of the other women. Okay. Because this was a mission for the Army, for their country, that they were going to serve their country. Whatever the mission was, they were going to do it. So all of these women, they were selected, and then they went to Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia. That is in the northern part of Georgia then, and that's where they trained, because in World War II, you had to train to go overseas. And so they had training, like wearing a gas mask, how to march, all of that stuff. And then leaving Fort Oglethorpe, they went to New York, to the port of New York, because they did not fly. When they moved, they got on ships. And that is how they went overseas, is by ship. And so these ladies, they went in segments. Miss Rudock remembered being on one of the ships. Now she says, she had never been on a boat, so she kind of was like, oh, okay. And it took them a couple of days. She also told me that they were chased by German boats because, again, World War II was going on. Okay. But she was just excited to be a part of this unit that was going over to serve overseas. Their first duty station was Birmingham, England. And Birmingham, England is where all of the mail that came from the United States would come into, because at the time it was a military airfield. And so all of this mail was coming into this airfield, and they was just packing it away, because nobody was processing the mail. Okay. And so it was probably 2, maybe 3 years of a backlog of mail. Now imagine that. Imagine an aircraft hangar. Okay, you all can picture an aircraft hangar. Imagine that aircraft hangar with letters, boxes from the floor to the ceiling. Aircraft hangars are pretty big. They're pretty tall, pretty wide. Imagine 3 or 4 packed to the ceiling aircraft hangars, okay? Because this backlog was 2 or 3 years, because nobody was processing the mail, okay? The Army needed to solve the problem of this backlog mail in the European theater, okay? While the mail was sitting there, it was cold, it was wet, rat infested, all kind of gruesome things, okay? Because it was just sitting there, okay? They needed to get this mail out. Now, keep in mind, it's World War II. Service members are moving, okay? When you're in the Army or in the military, you move several times. Well, this was a war, so they were moving on the move constantly. And I remember when I was in the service, every time I moved, I had to fill out a locator card. Okay, it was like a 5x8 card. And you put in your old information where you had been stationed, and then you would put in your new information where you were going to. Okay. And so that they could forward your mail. And that worked pretty good. Okay. But this was World War II. Okay. The other thing about World War II was most people could barely write. A lot of them could not read. Okay? So they were not sure what to do with all of this mail, because remember, on a envelope, you have the address. Okay? You have your address, where it's coming from, and you have your name, address, city, state, zip code, and then you have it going to whoever it's going to go to. Okay? World War II, most people could barely write. So they would probably have it addressed from, Mom and Dad Smith, and it was going to, I always like to use the example, Robert Smith Jr. Now, how many Robert Smiths Juniors are there? How many of them are right there with you now? How many of you all out there, last name is Smith? Okay. A lot, I'm sure. Okay. So imagine you've got, I don't know, 12, 1,300 Robert Smiths. Okay. And so they needed to solve this problem because service members wanted their mail. The 6888 was the answer. Now, the Army, the military, didn't have a whole lot of faith in them because they gave them 6 months to complete this mission. And I apologize for that phone ringing. Okay. My phone hasn't ringed all day long. Now it wants to ring now. Okay. So I apologize for that. Okay. So the Army gave, at the time, Captain Adams a mission of reducing this backlog of all of this over 2-year mail backlog, 6 months. And she took it on. She took it on. She, along with her command staff, set up the battalion. Now, most of you all know what a battalion is. You know how many people. This had 855 African-American women in it. It was 4 companies. I think it was headquarters, Bravo, Charlie, Delta companies. Okay. Captain Adams and her command staff, when they got to Birmingham, they set up this operation. You all know what that is. And it was going to be a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, 3 shifts of sorting mail, getting it rerouted, and getting it ready for distribution to go out to service members. The other thing that World War II had that we didn't, they had serial numbers. They didn't have Social Security numbers or DOD numbers, okay? They had serial numbers. The serial number was like a Social Security number or now a DOD number. It was very unique. So if you had, 100 Robert Smiths, while they may have the same name, they had different serial numbers. And that is how they were separated. That is how the Robert Smiths, the Bob Jones, that is how they were separated, by their serial numbers. Okay. So Captain Adams, along with her command staff, got the mission, went into completing the mission. She set up a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, and there were 3 shifts. These women worked around the clock to reduce this backlog of mail. Now, let me give you, because we got some math geniuses out there, I know, and they're wondering, well, just how much mail did they do? So estimate this. Estimate about 65,000 pieces of mail per shift. So each shift did about 65,000 pieces of mail. Okay. And they did that. It was 3 shifts. So 65,000 times 3 is 195,000 pieces of mail per hour. So every 24 hours, there was an estimated of 195,000 pieces of boxes, letters, whatever, being processed by the 688. And they did this 7 days a week, along with, because they were an Army unit, you still got other things to do. You still have to clean the barracks. You still had to do any other special assignments came up, like maybe marching in a parade or going out to do some special duties. You still had to do KP duty. KP duty is kitchen duty, by the way, okay? You still had to do latrine duty, okay? You still probably had, and they had what they call CQ, okay, charge of quarters, okay? Just in case y'all didn't know that, okay? They still had to do all of this other Army stuff, in addition to doing processing this mail, okay? Because this was an Army unit. They still had to do all of this, okay? And that was something that they did around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, like a lot of units today, they had their motto. You want to know what it was? It's right here. No mail, low morale. And that's what it was. It really was like that. Service members were not getting any mail, therefore their morale was low. And I can understand that, because in my time, when I was in the military, I couldn't wait to get to my unit because I knew all of my mail would be there. And one of the first places I wanted to go was to the mail room, okay? Because I wanted to get my mail, because mail was the morale booster, okay? Now, the 688, working those 3 shifts, 24 hours a day. And what did I say? The military, the Army gave them a mission, months of 6 months to complete the mission. We're through the leadership of then Captain Adams and her staff. This unit reduced this over 2-year backlog in 3 months. Yes, in 3 months. So what did the Army do? Well, first of all, the Army didn't even believe that they had actually reduced it in 3 months. They just thought it was, oh, okay, well, that was a fluke. So what did they do? The Army gave them another mission and said, okay, you're going to leave Birmingham, England, and we're going to send you to Rion and Paris, France. Because Rion was just outside of Paris. Again, this was World War II. And the same exact thing happened, because mail was being piled up there in France. Nobody was doing the mail, okay? And what happened? Captain Adams and the women of the 688 went to Paris and did the exact same thing. They reduced the backlog in Paris in 3 months. Now, when I talked with Ms. Rudock, she remembers Paris. She said it was a fun place, and during the times where they did have liberty or time off or pass or leave, how you want to put it, she did enjoy going out and seeing Paris in the midst of all of the wars and all of the stuff that was going on. She remembered going and visiting the museums there in Paris, and the going to the movie theaters and going to restaurants, having the freedom that they had in Paris that they did not have in the United States because of the color of their skin. And so the unit really enjoyed that. And so the 688 also, these women were also very talented. They had talent shows that they put on. A lot of them were singers. A lot of them were dancers. A lot of them could sing and dance and play instruments. Okay. And so they had talent shows. They also, women, they also played a pretty mean game of softball. And in fact, the softball team took on this one team and beat them. Okay. I mean, this, I know I wouldn't want to play with them because they were pretty good. One of the women in the unit who just died last year, Mrs. Indiana Hunt Martin, and she is right here in this picture. This is Indiana Hunt Martin. Mrs. Indiana Hunt Martin lived here in Laurel with her daughter, and she just died last year. She was 98 years old, okay? She, like a lot of the other women, lived alone up until she had broken her hip and had to come and live with her daughter, but her daughter kind of had to trick her to move down here. She was from New York, the Buffalo, Niagara Falls area. And like many of the other women, when she got out of the service, she went back to school, got an education, and then went to work for the Department of Labor, New York State. And there's where she retired. She remembered being on the softball team. She said her brother taught her how to throw the ball. Okay. And she said they were pretty good. Actually, she said she was pretty good. So I believe them. Okay. Like I said, I would not want to play them. Okay. Now, it was not all rosy for the 6th AAA. They did have their tough times over there, but the members that are living now all say that they were treated much better in England and even in France than they were in the United States. But there was also tragedy with the 6th AAA. While they were stationed in France, they lost 3 members. 3 members of the 6th AAA were killed in a Jeep accident there in Rouen, France. Did you know that there are only 4 women buried at the National Military Cemetery at Normandy? Did you know that? Okay, that's not a test. Okay. There are 4 women buried at Normandy's American Cemetery there in Normandy, France. Now, many of you, if you've ever been to Normandy, it is a really great place to go and visit. It'll get you because it's really gut-wrenching. I will tell you that one of the best stories that depicts Normandy, where you can see the grasp of it, is Saving Private Ryan. If you get a chance, look at that movie so that then you'll understand the gravity of what I'm saying about Normandy. When I went to Normandy, I was stationed in Germany, in Kaiserslautern, and I went on like a 5-day tour of this like military tour. And our first stop was Normandy. We went down on Utah Beach, and then we got the story, went to Point du Hoc, and then we went to the cemetery. And it was kind of like a cloudy day. It was drizzling rain. And to me, that was the best time to be there, okay? Because at one point you look at this one, I was standing on this one level and you could look out and there were nothing but white gravestones, okay? The caretaker of the cemetery came up to me, I guess because I think I was the only Black person in the group, I'm not sure. But anyway, he came up to me and he says, do you know there are 3 Black women buried here? There are only 4 women buried in Normandy, and 3 of them are Black. And so he told me where they were. And then at that time, I didn't know the story about the 6th AAA. And so he took me to each one of the grave sites. And I said, wow. And he didn't know much about the women that were buried there, those three. But then as I learned about the 6 AAA, and I was like, oh my God, I saw those 3 graves when I went to Normandy. And so these women, like I said, were killed in a Jeep accident, and the military, the Army, for whatever reason, would not send their bodies back to the States. And so the unit, the battalion, Charity Adams and her command staff asked if there were any women that had mortuary experience. And there were, because again, a lot of these women had professions before they got out, before they came into the service. So there were women in there that knew how to prepare a deceased body, okay? And the women in the unit all raised money to make sure that these 3 women had a proper burial, because they were not going back home to their families. They made sure that they had a proper burial. And these 3 women, along with the other woman who was a Red Cross volunteer at the time, are buried there in Normandy Military Cemetery. If you ever get to go to Normandy, make sure you check out the cemetery. It is truly amazing there. So that, like I said, it was not all hunky-dory. It's not all happy times. They did have their different disappointing times and times of sadness. But they charged on. And when they finished their assignment, and again, like I said, they went to Paris and they did the same exact thing. They reduced the backlog and finished it in 3 months. They were given 6 months. They finished it in 3 months. How about that? So, there was a lot of happy service members and other people serving overseas because they was getting their mail. Because again, I know I was happy when I got my mail. The last of the 6 AAA, when the war was over, they left the European Command February of 1946, and they returned to a segregated United States, where, again, they were thought of as the lowest of the lowest. A lot of the unit, when they returned back, they got to fly back on airplanes. Okay, Miss Rudock was one of them. She flew back and landed in Philadelphia, and her transition point was Fort Dix, New Jersey. Now, Fort Dix, New Jersey is where I went to basic training. Okay. And again, they were all asked, would you like to stay on active duty or would you like to ETS or transition out? And Ms. Rudock, like a lot of the women, was saying, no, I'm going to transition out. I'm going to go back home, go back to school, and go on with my life. Ms. Rudock is originally from Washington, D.C. So as she told me, she got her 214 and her other paperwork, got on the train, and came back to Washington, D.C. And she used her GI Bill because she wanted to be a fashion designer, okay? She wanted to go to fashion school and be a fashion designer. And so that's what she initially went to school for. And of course, however, that didn't work out, okay? And so after graduation, she couldn't find a job there in New York, and she went into banking. And banking became her career. And she stayed in banking for about 30 years. Once she retired from banking, then because she was living in New York at the time, then she came back to Washington, D.C. Okay. She currently lives here in Maryland, where I live at. And Ms. Rudock is so delightful. When you ask her about her service, she says, well, we did what we were supposed to do. We completed the mission, and then we moved on. They really didn't stand around and talk about it. Okay. They didn't. Okay. They didn't get an award when they left the service. They didn't get a parade when they left the service. Nobody asked them. Remember, They're back in the United States now. They're at the bottom of the totem pole because of the color of their skin. Okay, now these are women, just like the men, they have served their country and they come back to face discrimination and segregation. But that didn't stop them. They went on, a lot of them had kids. Miss Rudock has a daughter. A lot of them had kids. They put their kids through school and never, ever talked about their service until 2018 when I met Miss Rudock. Okay, and I would tell you, the day that I met her, I actually don't know what I was expecting, but I certainly was not expecting somebody who looked like Miss Rudock. Okay, she's now 97. She lives alone, and last August of 2020, she decided to give up driving. But she only gave up driving because she had one of those cars where they don't even make the parts anymore. I think it was like a Pontiac Sunbird or something like that. They don't even make those cars anymore. So, it was just going to cost too much money for her to fix. So she decided on her own, I'm going to give up driving. I'm just going to stop driving. Okay. Now, what's so funny about that was the month before, July, I took her to the Maryland Motor Vehicle Division to renew her license, to renew her driver's license. And the man sitting there processing her license looked at me and said, "Is this for real? Is she 96?" Because her birthday is September 16th. "Is she 96?" I was like, "Ask her. She's sitting right there. Don't ask me." So Ms. Rudock looks at him and she says, "Well, yeah, why are you asking her that?" And he was like, "Oh, okay." So she gets her license renewed, and wait for it, she gets her license renewed for 5 years. Yeah. So that would make her what, like 102? And the guy, when she got her license, the guy said, "Okay, well, I'll see you in 5 years." And Miss Rudock looks at him and says, "Yep, you will, and I'll still be driving." How about that? But like I said, she decided to give up driving simply because she just did not want to pay the repairs to get her car repaired. Does she still have a driver's license? Yes, she still does. She is the true backseat driver. She tells me when I'm driving her, "Well, blow the horn, just turn right there, and I have to look at her like, "Okay, I'm driving. You're not driving, sit over there." Okay. And she still lives alone. Okay, very delightful lady. The other thing, the final thing, and I'm going to wrap this up, is I'm also on the project to get these women, the unit, the 688, the U.S. Congressional Gold Medal. The U.S. Congressional Gold Medal is one of the highest honors that an individual, or in this case, a unit, can get from our country. I am serving on that committee right now to try and get enough votes in the Senate and in the House of Representatives to bring the bill to vote so that we can get this unit, this Congressional Gold Medal, to thank these women for their service. It is very important that these women are recognized not only for their service, but recognized for doing one of the most important things in the Army, and that was mail. Okay? I'm going to ask you to help us do that by contacting your U.S. senators, your state U.S. senators, your state U.S. representatives. Okay, contact them and ask them to please support the bill to get the 688 Central Postal Directory Battalion the U.S. Congressional Gold Medal. Now, what I can do is my email address is lizzspirit@yahoo.com. So it's Liz, LIZZSPIRIT at yahoo.com. Send me a note. Tell me you're from George Marshall. Okay. And I will send you a soft copy letter where you can send it out to your family and friends, asking them to support. And if you want to email, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, your state, your U.S. state senator and U.S. House of Representative, you can do all of that. They have all of that technology. Okay. So again, my email address is lizzspirit, 2 words, one word together, LIZZSPIRIT at yahoo.com. It is lowercase. Okay. lizzspirit@yahoo.com. And finally, I want to thank you all for attending, and thank you all for listening. This is a very new experience for me, okay? But I also want to remember we lost some members of the 6th AAA. We lost Mrs. Elizabeth Barker Johnson. She was born May 12th, 1920, and she died August 23rd, 2020. Yes, she was 100 years old. She went to Winston-Salem State University there in North Carolina. She's from North Carolina, okay? She was 100 when she died. She was also a truck driver. She drove the troop truck in the unit, which also got the mail out. Mrs. Barker Johnson was an educator. She was one of those ones that got out of the service, went back to school, used her GI Bill, and went into the field of education and served another 30, 40 years as an educator. I thank her for her service. The next one we lost was, again, Mrs. Indiana Hunt Martin. She was originally from Valdosta, Georgia. She moved to New York State. She died in September of 2020. She was 98 years old. Miss Hunt Martin was just a delight to know. She loved to go to the casinos, okay? And she told some of the best stories. Her memory, like all of their memories, was intact when it came to the 6th AAA. And we lost just recently on February 9th, we lost another member, Miss Maybelle Tanner Campbell. She was 99. She would have been 100 in May. And Mrs. Campbell in 2018 took a ride up in a restored World War II airplane. And she thought that was just the coolest thing, okay? And then we lost also last year, Coach John Thompson. I don't know if any of you know him. He was the legendary coach for Georgetown University. He coached people like Patrick Ewing, Allen, the guy that played in Philadelphia. But he was legendary in not only at Georgetown, but in the arena of basketball. He's in the Hall of Fame. He had a cousin that was in the 6th AAA, and his mother used to talk about this cousin all of the time, saying, hey, you have a cousin that's out there doing great things, okay? She's serving her country. She's not letting barriers stop you, and you don't let barriers stop you. And he always remembered that. And he was a great, great supporter of the 6th AAA. And so we remembered them. I thank Coach Thompson not only for his support of the 6th AAA, but for what he did for basketball and of course education. And again, my email address is lizzspirit, lizzspirit @yahoo.com. The bill numbers for the Congressional Gold Medal for the Senate is S.321. That's the Senate bill. And then for the House bill, it is H.R.1012. And again, I thank you for taking the time out to listen to me and to go through this experience with me. It was that. And I wish you well in all of your endurance. And I hope that if you do go into service, that you have a very successful career and don't let anything stop you. As I often say, the sky is the limit because women like the 6th AAA paved the way so that we can continue to have a road that was paved and we can go and do anything that we want to do and obtain any amount of rank that we can do. The only person that stops you is you. I thank George Marshall very much for inviting me to do this. I think this is pretty neat. Okay. And again, just thank you. Stay in school. Okay. Get an education because that truly is the key and the passport to a very successful life. I thank my Zoom tech guy, Paul Lavender Good. I thank him very much for helping me out here. And again, thank you, George Marshall. Have a great day.